The thing about Wyoming Territory in 1882 was that it didn't pretend to be anything other than what it was, a place where the strong preyed on the weak, where the law was whatever the man with the most guns said it was, and where a woman alone was about as safe as a lamb in a wolf den. Daisy had known this her whole life, but knowing something and living it were two different things entirely. She stood now in the back room of the Silver Spur Saloon, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. The room smelled of stale tobacco, spilled liquor, and something else, something darker that she didn't want to name. Four men sat around a table scattered with cards and empty bottles. Her brother Tommy slumped in his chair, his face the color of old ash. "I don't have it," Tommy said for the third time, his voice cracking. "I swear, Mr. McCready, I thought—" "You thought." Silas McCready's voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and thick through the middle, with a face that looked like it had been carved with a dull axe. A scar ran from his left eye to his jaw, a souvenir from a claim dispute that had ended with two men dead and McCready owning their land. "That's your problem, boy. You keep thinking you're smarter than you are." McCready's eyes slid to Daisy and she felt her skin crawl. She'd seen that look before, on men eyeing horses at auction, calculating value, weighing worth. $3,000, McCready continued, still looking at Daisy. "That's what you owe me, plus interest." He smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Comes out to about 4,000 now." Tommy made a sound like a wounded animal. "I can get it. Just give me time." "Time?" McCready laughed, and his three companions, hard men with harder eyes, joined in. "Boy, I gave you time. 3 months' worth. You pissed it away on cards and whiskey, same as you always do." Daisy found her voice. "What about the ranch?" "Papa's land." "Already mortgaged," McCready said, not looking away from her. "Your daddy was smarter than his son, but not by much. Borrowed against it 2 years before he died. Tommy here's been paying the interest, but the principal's mine if he defaults." He tilted his head, which he's about to. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Daisy's father had died 6 months ago, kicked by a horse and gone 3 days later from infection. Her mother had passed 2 years before that, pneumonia that started as a cough and ended in a grave. That left just Daisy and Tommy had always been weak where it counted. "There has to be something," Daisy started. "There is." McCready stood, and even though Daisy was tall for a woman, he towered over her. "I'm a reasonable man, a fair man, so I'm going to give your brother here a way out." The hope that flared in Tommy's eyes made Daisy sick. McCready walked around the table, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. When he reached Daisy, he stopped close enough that she could smell the whiskey on him, see the broken veins in his nose. "You're 22, he said. It wasn't a question. "Not married. No prospects that I've heard of." "That's none of your business," Daisy said, hating how her voice shook. "It is now." McCready reached out and touched her hair, and it took everything in Daisy not to flinch. "Pretty thing like you, strong, healthy. You'd make a good wife." The room went very quiet. "No," Daisy said. The word came out stronger than she felt. "No. I'm offering to marry you, girl. That's more than most would do." McCready's hand moved from her hair to her chin, gripping it hard enough to hurt. "You become my wife. The debt's forgiven. Your brother keeps the ranch. Everybody wins." "Everybody but me." McCready's grip tightened. "You don't seem to understand the situation. Let me make it clear." He released her chin and pulled a revolver from his belt, pressing it against her temple. The metal was cold, shockingly cold. "I own this town. I own the sheriff. I own half the territorial legislature. Your brother owes me money he can't pay, which means I own him too. And what's his is mine." Daisy's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She could see Tommy from the corner of her eye, pale and shaking, useless as always. "You can marry me willing," McCready continued, his voice still that terrible, gentle tone, "or I can take what's owed another way. Your choice." "Daisy," Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry." As if sorry could fix this. As if sorry could undo the cards he'd played, the bottles he'd emptied, the promises he'd broken. Daisy closed her eyes. She thought of her mother, who'd taught her to read and write and figure numbers. She thought of her father, who'd shown her how to ride and shoot and survive. She thought of the life she'd imagined for herself. Nothing grand, just honest work, and maybe someone to share it with, someone she'd chosen. That life was gone now. It had never really existed outside her head anyway. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. McCready laughed and lowered the gun. "That's more like it. Smart girl." He holstered the revolver. "I'll give you until tomorrow night. Come to my house with your answer. If it's yes, we'll get married Sunday. If it's no," he shrugged. "Well, Tommy here knows what happens to people who don't pay their debts." He moved toward the door, his men following. At the threshold, he turned back. "One more thing. You try to run, I'll find you. And when I do, you'll wish you'd said yes when you had the chance." Then they were gone, and Daisy was alone with her brother. Tommy stood on shaking legs. "Daisy, I never meant—" She hit him. Her hand cracked across his face with enough force to snap his head sideways. Don't you dare!" "I can fix this." "How?" She heard her voice rising but couldn't stop it. "How are you going to fix this, Tommy? You going to conjure $4,000 out of thin air? You going to stand up to McCready and his guns?" I don't know. Tommy's face crumpled. "I thought I could win it back. The cards were running good, and then the cards are never running good enough." Daisy turned away from him, her hands shaking now too. "Papa trusted you with the ranch. Mama would have trusted you to take care of me, and you—" Her voice broke. "You sold me to pay for your stupidity." "I'll talk to him. I'll make him see reason. He doesn't want reason. He wants me." Daisy wrapped her arms around herself. "And you gave me to him." The silence that followed was worse than anything McCready had said. After a long moment, she heard Tommy shuffle toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked without turning. "I don't know. Away. I can't look at you right now." "Good. Because if you stay, I might kill you myself." The door opened and closed. Daisy stood alone in the dim room, surrounded by the debris of her brother's weakness. A fly buzzed near one of the empty bottles. Somewhere outside, a piano played badly. She had until tomorrow night to decide if she'd rather be owned by Silas McCready or watch her brother die. Some choice. Daisy didn't go home. Home was the ranch, 3 miles outside town, and right now she couldn't face those empty rooms with their memories of better times. Instead, she walked. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of copper and rust. The main street of Redemption, ironically named if ever a town was busy with the evening crowd. Cowboys fresh off the range looking for liquor and company. Merchants closing up their shops. Women in fine dresses heading to dinner, their husbands in dark suits beside them. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by the kind of desperation that was eating Daisy alive. She found herself at the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land. The wind here was constant, wearing down everything it touched. In the distance, the mountains stood dark against the sky, indifferent to human suffering. "You lost, miss." Daisy spun, her hand going instinctively to the knife she kept in her boot. A man stood a few yards away, leading a horse. She hadn't heard him approach, which was careless. Carelessness could get you killed. "I'm fine," she said, her voice sharp. The stranger held up his free hand. "Didn't mean to startle you, just saw you standing out here alone, thought you might need help." "I don't." He nodded slowly. He was tall, broad across the shoulders, but lean through the middle, like someone who'd spent years working hard and eating light. His face was weathered, hard to age, could have been 30, could have been 40. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, and his gun sat easy on his hip like it belonged there. "Fair enough," he said. He started to turn away, then paused. "You're the Lockhart girl, aren't you? Daisy?" Her hand tightened on the knife. "Who's asking?" "Name's Hunter Ingram. I knew your father a little. Bought a horse from him a few years back. Good man. He's dead." "I heard. I'm sorry." Ingram's eyes were gray, the color of winter sky. They studied her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Heard about your brother's troubles, too." Of course he had. In a town this size, everyone knew everything within an hour of it happening. By now, the whole territory probably knew that Tommy Lockhart had gambled away his sister to Silas McCready. "If you're here to gloat, I'm here to make you an offer." Daisy laughed, bitter and sharp. I've had enough offers for one day. Thanks. This one's different. Ingram tied his horse to a nearby post and walked closer. Not too close, she noted, respectful of her space. I need a wife. Jesus. Daisy turned away. What is it with you people? I'm not a prize horse. I know what you are. You're a woman in a bad situation who doesn't have a lot of options. His voice was matter-of-fact, no pity in it. And I'm a man with land, but no one to help work it. We could help each other. By getting married. For a year. After that, you're free to go with enough money to start over somewhere McCready can't reach you. Daisy turned back, studying him. Why would you do that? Because I need help, and you need a way out. Simple as that. Nothing's ever simple. Fair point. Ingram crossed his arms. Here's the truth. I've got 300 acres in the North Valley. Good land, decent water. But it's too much for one person, and I can't afford to hire help. I need a partner. A wife, Daisy corrected. A partner who's legally a wife, yes, for appearance's sake. He met her eyes. I'm not looking for what McCready's looking for. I don't need a woman to warm my bed. I need someone who can work hard, handle themselves, and won't fold at the first sign of trouble. And after a year? After a year, we dissolve the marriage quietly. You get your freedom and enough money to make a real start somewhere. I get a year's worth of help getting the ranch running proper. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. What's the catch? The catch is it won't be easy. Ranch work never is. The catch is we'll be legally bound, which means if I turn out to be a bastard, you're stuck for a year. The catch is McCready won't like it, and he's not a man who takes rejection well. I noticed. So you'll have to decide if trading one problem for a potentially different problem is worth it. Ingram shrugged. I can't promise it'll be better, just different. Daisy looked at him for a long moment. He didn't look away, didn't fidget, didn't try to sell her harder, just stood there and let her think. How do I know you're not just a different version of McCready? You don't. All you've got is my word, and you don't know me well enough to judge if that's worth anything. He paused. But I knew your father. He was a decent man who loved his family. I figure his daughter probably inherited some of that strength. That's the kind of partner I need. My father also raised a son who gambles away everything he touches. People are complicated. Ingram untied his horse. I'm staying at the boarding house on 3rd Street, room 7. You've got until tomorrow morning to decide. After that, I'll assume you've made other arrangements, and I'll move on. That's it? No pressure, no threats? Would those change your mind? No? Then there's no point. He swung up into the saddle with easy grace. For what it's worth, I hope you choose the option that gives you the most freedom, whatever that turns out to be. He rode off into the gathering dark, leaving Daisy alone with the wind and her thoughts. 2 offers in one day. One from a devil she knew was evil, one from a stranger who might be lying through his teeth. Some choice. Daisy walked for another hour before her feet carried her back to the ranch. The house sat dark against the darker sky, windows like empty eyes. Tommy's horse was in the barn, which meant he'd come home, probably to drink himself unconscious with whatever liquor he had stashed. She couldn't face him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, she went to her parents' grave. They were buried on a small rise behind the house, marked with simple wooden crosses her father had made himself. Her mother's cross was weathered now, 2 years of wind and rain wearing down the carved letters. Her father's was newer, the wood still raw. Daisy sat between them, her back against her mother's headstone. I don't know what to do, she said to the empty night. Papa, you always had answers. You always knew the right path. But you left me with Tommy, and Tommy's useless. Her throat tightened. Mama, you taught me to be strong, to think for myself, but I'm not strong enough for this. The wind was her only answer. She thought about McCready, about the cold certainty in his eyes when he'd pressed that gun to her head. He would own her completely. She'd be his property in every way that mattered, and if he chose to be cruel, and men like McCready always chose cruelty eventually, there'd be no escape. She thought about Ingram, about his calm voice and steady eyes. He could be lying. The whole partner story could be a trick to get her away from town where no one would hear her scream. But something in his manner, the way he'd kept his distance, the way he'd offered her a choice without pressure, it felt different. Or maybe she was just desperate enough to believe anything that looked like hope. What would you do? She asked her parents' graves. Would you tell me to run, fight, submit? But she knew the answer. Her father had taught her to survive, whatever that took. Her mother had taught her that survival didn't mean giving up who you were. The question wasn't what they would do. It was what she would do. Daisy sat there until the stars came out, bright and cold and uncaring. When she finally stood, her decision was made. It wasn't a good decision. There were no good decisions in her situation, but it was the only one she could live with. She walked back to the house, past Tommy's room where she could hear him snoring, drunk as expected. In her own room, she lit a lamp and started packing. Not much, a few clothes, her mother's Bible, the small amount of money she'd saved. Everything she owned that mattered fit in one worn carpet bag. She wrote a note for Tommy. It took 3 tries before she got it right. Gone. Don't look for me. You made your choice, now I'm making mine. The ranch is yours to lose or keep. I don't care anymore. D. Short. Cold. True. She left it on the kitchen table, weighed down with her father's pocket watch, the one thing of value Tommy hadn't pawned yet. Let him have it. Let him pawn it, or keep it, or throw it in the river. She was done carrying the weight of his mistakes. Dawn was still an hour off when Daisy walked out of the house for the last time. She didn't look back. Looking back was for people who had something to return to. The boarding house on 3rd Street was dark except for one window on the 2nd floor. Room 7. Daisy stood outside for a long moment, her bag heavy in her hand, her future balanced on a knife's edge. Then she climbed the stairs and knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Ingram stood there, fully dressed despite the hour, looking like he'd been expecting her. I have conditions, Daisy said without preamble. I'd expect nothing less. It's a business arrangement, nothing more. You keep your hands to yourself. Agreed. After a year the marriage ends and I get enough money to start over, somewhere far from here. Agreed. If you break your word, if you try to... She stopped, struggling for words that wouldn't make her sick. If you turn out to be like McCready, I'll kill you. I'll wait until you're asleep, and I'll put a knife in your heart. Ingram didn't smile, didn't flinch. Understood. And if you try to run off before the year's up, you're on your own. No money, no help. Fair? Then we have an agreement. He held out his hand. Daisy looked at it for a long moment. This was it. The moment where she stepped off the edge and hoped like hell there was ground below instead of empty air. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, the hand of a man who worked for a living. We'll leave before sunrise, Ingram said. McCready finds out you're gone. He'll come after us. We need distance. He'll come anyway. Probably. But by then we'll be married, and even McCready can't undo that without causing trouble he doesn't need. Ingram stepped back into his room. There's a spare room downstairs. Get some sleep. We've got a long ride ahead. Daisy nodded and turned away. Behind her, she heard the door close softly. She found the spare room, little more than a closet with a cot, and sat on the thin mattress. Sleep was impossible. Her mind raced through everything that could go wrong, all the ways this could end badly. But it was done now. For better or worse, she'd made her choice. Outside, the sky began to lighten. Somewhere in Redemption, Silas McCready was sleeping, dreaming of his new acquisition. Somewhere on the Lockhart Ranch, Tommy was passed out drunk, oblivious to the fact that his sister was gone. And here, in this small room in a rundown boarding house, Daisy Lockhart was becoming someone else. Someone who'd chosen the unknown over the known horror. Someone who'd rather gamble on a stranger's word than accept certain destruction. Whether that made her brave or foolish, only time would tell. The sun broke over the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and promise. It was a lie. Daisy knew that. The sun rose on good and evil alike, indifferent to human suffering. But lies were sometimes easier to bear than truth. Ingram knocked on her door exactly at dawn. Time to go. Daisy picked up her bag and followed him out into the new day, into her new life, into whatever waited on the other side of this desperate bargain. Behind her, Redemption still slept, unaware that one of its daughters had slipped away like smoke on the wind. Ahead lay 300 acres of hard land, a year of harder work, and a man she didn't know but had just bound herself to. And somewhere between behind and ahead lay the slim, fragile possibility of freedom. It would have to be enough. They rode north as the sun climbed, two strangers bound by a handshake and desperation. Hunter Ingram led the way on his buckskin gelding, while Daisy followed on a sorrel mare he'd bought from the livery that morning. He hadn't asked if she could ride, just handed her the reins and assumed she could manage. She appreciated that. Being treated like she had sense was rare enough to feel like a gift. The landscape changed as they put miles between themselves and redemption. The flat scrubland gave way to rolling hills dotted with sage and juniper. The mountains loomed larger, their peaks still white with snow that wouldn't melt until summer hit full force. It was beautiful in a harsh way, like everything else in this territory. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? They'd made their bargain, and now they had to live with it. Around midday, Ingram pulled up near a creek that cut through a stand of cottonwoods. "We'll rest the horses here. There's jerky in my saddlebag if you're hungry." Daisy dismounted, her legs stiff from hours in the saddle. She led the mare to the creek and let her drink while Ingram did the same with his gelding. The water ran clear and cold, snowmelt from the high country. She knelt and cupped her hands, drinking deep. It tasted like stone and sky. "How much further?" she asked. "Another 4 hours, give or take." Ingram pulled out the jerky and offered her a piece. It was tough as leather, but edible. "We'll make it before dark if we don't dawdle." "And then what?" He glanced at her. "Then we get to work. Ranch doesn't run itself." "I meant the marriage. There's a circuit preacher comes through the valley every few weeks. We'll catch him next time he's around. Make it legal." Ingram chewed his jerky slowly. "Until then, we're just two people sharing a house and some hard work. People will talk. Let them. We're miles from the nearest neighbor, and the folks in the valley mind their own business mostly." He paused. "You worried about your reputation?" "I'm worried about McCready showing up with a gun and a grudge." "That's a fair worry." Ingram's hand rested on his thigh, close to his pistol. Not touching it, just aware. "But he'll have to find us first, and I didn't exactly advertise where I live." Daisy finished her jerky and wiped her hands on her skirt. "You know he owns half the territorial government. He'll find out eventually." "Eventually isn't today." Ingram stood and stretched. "And by the time he does, we'll be married legal and proper. Harder for him to claim you then." "He doesn't strike me as a man who cares much about legal." "No, but he cares about looking respectable. Man in his position has to." Ingram gathered his horse's reins. "He makes a fuss about a married woman. People start asking questions. Bad for business." Daisy wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury she couldn't afford. Still, he was right about one thing. Today wasn't the day McCready would find them. That was enough. They rode on. The sun was angling toward the western peaks when they crested a rise, and Daisy got her first look at what would be her home for the next year. The valley spread below them, a long stretch of grassland bordered by hills on 3 sides. A creek, the same one they'd stopped at probably, wound through the middle, lined with willows. Near the water stood a house, barn, and a few outbuildings. Small, rough, nothing fancy. "That's it," Ingram said, and there might have been pride in his voice. Hard to tell. They descended into the valley as the light turned golden. Up close, the ranch looked even rougher than from above. The house was log construction, chinked with mud and moss. The barn leaned slightly to one side, like it was tired and thinking about lying down. Fences needed mending. Weeds grew tall around the outbuildings. It looked like exactly what it was. A place that needed more hands than it had. Ingram dismounted and led his horse toward the barn. "I'll get the animals settled. You can look around, get your bearings." Daisy slid from the saddle, her legs protesting. She handed him the mare's reins and watched him disappear into the barn, then turned toward the house. The door wasn't locked. Out here, locks probably didn't matter much. She pushed it open and stepped inside. One main room that served as kitchen, dining area, and sitting space. A fireplace on the far wall, cold now. A rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. Shelves holding supplies, flour, salt, coffee, canned goods. A door led to what she assumed was a bedroom. Another door stood open, revealing a small room with a cot and a trunk. Everything was clean but spare, functional. The home of a man who didn't care much about comfort. Daisy set her bag on the table and walked to the window. From here she could see the barn, the creek, the hills rising beyond. It was isolated. If she screamed, no one would hear her. The thought came unbidden and unwelcome. This was her choice. She'd made it with open eyes, still. The door opened behind her and she turned too fast, her hand going to her knife. Ingram stopped in the doorway. Easy. Just me. She forced her hand away from the weapon. Sorry. Habit. Good habit to have. He came inside, leaving the door open behind him. Horses are fed and watered. I'll make something to eat. Then we can talk through how things will work here. I can cook, Daisy said. Didn't say you couldn't, but you've been riding all day. Sit. It wasn't a suggestion, but it wasn't an order either. Just a statement of fact. Daisy found she didn't mind. She was tired, bone deep, and soul sick, and the idea of someone else doing the work for once was almost seductive. She sat at the table and watched Ingram move around the kitchen. He worked with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing for himself a long time, slicing bacon, frying it in a pan, scrambling eggs with stale bread. Nothing fancy, but it smelled good. Her stomach reminded her she'd barely eaten all day. He set a plate in front of her and took the other chair with his own. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. The small room's yours, Ingram said finally. It's not much, but it's private. I'll take the main bedroom. All right? We'll split the work. I'll handle the heavy repairs and livestock management. You'll manage the house, the garden, help with the animals when I need it. He paused. You know how to shoot? My father taught me. Good. There's a rifle in the bedroom, another over the door. Ammunition in the trunk in your room. You see anyone coming who doesn't belong, you don't hesitate. You expecting trouble? I'm expecting we're far enough out that trouble has to work to find us. But if it does, we need to be ready. Ingram finished his eggs. Bears sometimes come down from the high country. Wolves if the winter's been hard. And there's always drifters looking for easy pickings. Daisy absorbed this. Another layer of danger to add to the stack. What about neighbors? There's a few families scattered through the valley. Closest is the Henslows, about 3 miles east. Bill and Mary, good people. They've got 4 kids, all boys, wild as spring colts. He almost smiled. Mary'll probably come by once she hears there's a woman at my place. She's been trying to marry me off for 2 years. What do we tell her? The truth. Near enough. We got married quick, didn't want to wait. She'll understand that. Ingram stood and collected their plates. Folks out here don't pry too much. Everyone's got their reasons for being where they are. He washed the dishes while Daisy sat, trying to wrap her mind around the strangeness of it all. 12 hours ago, she'd been in Redemption, staring down the barrel of McCready's gun. Now she was sitting in a rough cabin in the middle of nowhere, watching a stranger wash dishes while planning their fake marriage. Life came at you fast sometimes. I'll show you around properly tomorrow, Ingram said, drying his hands. For tonight, just settle in. There's water in the basin if you want to wash up, and the privy's out back. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. He nodded and disappeared into the main bedroom, closing the door behind him. Daisy sat alone in the gathering darkness, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, the distant call of an owl, wind in the eaves. She should move. Should unpack her bag, wash her face, prepare for sleep. Instead, she sat, letting the weight of the day press down on her. She'd escaped McCready, but at what cost? She'd bound herself to a stranger for a year, promised to work land that wasn't hers, sleep in a house that would never be home. And if Ingram turned out to be lying, if his business arrangement was just a prettier cage than McCready's, she'd have no recourse. She'd be miles from help, alone with a man who could do anything he wanted. But he'd had all day to do something. They'd been alone on the trail for hours, and he'd kept his distance, kept his word. That had to count for something. Didn't it? Daisy stood finally and went to the small room that was now hers. It was barely big enough for the cot and trunk, but it had a window that looked out toward the creek, and when she opened it, fresh air spilled in, carrying the smell of sage and water. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a nightdress, and lay down on the cot. The mattress was thin but clean. Through the wall, she could hear Ingram moving around in the next room, settling in for the night. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought dreams of guns and debts and men who treated women like livestock. She woke before dawn to the sound of someone moving in the kitchen. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory crashed back. Redemption, McCready, the long ride north. Ingram's ranch. Her new life. Daisy dressed quickly and emerged from her room to find Ingram already up, stoking the fire, coffee boiling on the stove. "You're up early?" she said. Ranch doesn't sleep in. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "Figured we'd start with a tour, then get to work. There's a lot needs doing before winter." It's barely spring. Exactly. Which means we've got maybe 6 months to get this place ready. He sipped his coffee, looking at her over the rim. You ready for that? Was she? Daisy didn't know, but ready or not, she was here. Let's find out, she said. The tour took most of the morning. Ingram showed her everything. The barn where he kept 2 horses, a milk cow, and a half-dozen chickens that laid eggs when they felt like it. The garden plot, overgrown with weeds but salvageable. The creek that provided water year-round, cold and clean from the mountains. The fences that needed mending. The roof that needed patching. The winter stores that needed building. It was overwhelming. One man couldn't do all this alone. No wonder he'd needed help. I know it looks bad, Ingram said as they stood near the barn, surveying the work ahead. But the bones are good. The land's solid, water's reliable, and we're far enough from the main trails that we don't get bothered much. What made you choose this place? He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the valley. I spent 10 years working other people's land, building other people's dreams. Figured it was time to build my own. He glanced at her. What about you? What were you building before your brother gambled it away? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Survival, I guess. That's all any of us were doing. That's not building, that's just existing. Sometimes existing is all you can manage. Fair enough. Ingram turned back toward the house. Come on, I'll show you how to work the pump. They fell into a routine over the next few days. Ingram would wake before dawn and tend to the animals while Daisy started breakfast. They'd eat together, then split up to tackle the endless list of tasks. He'd work on fences or the barn roof while she attacked the garden, pulling weeds and turning soil that hadn't been worked in too long. Afternoons, they'd come together for whatever job needed 2 sets of hands, moving supplies, repairing the chicken coop, hauling water. It was hard work, harder than anything Daisy had done before. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her back ached. She fell into bed each night too tired to think, which was a mercy. They didn't talk much beyond what was necessary. Pass me that hammer. The fence is weak on the north side. We're low on flour. Functional communication, nothing personal. Until the 4th day, when everything went wrong. Daisy was in the garden, attacking a particularly stubborn patch of thistle, when she heard the cow bellow. Not the normal lowing that meant it was time for milking. This was distress. She dropped her tools and ran toward the barn. The cow was in the small paddock, backing away from something in the corner. Daisy's heart jumped into her throat when she saw it. A rattlesnake, coiled and buzzing its warning, blocking the cow's path to water. Don't move. Ingram's voice, calm and low, came from behind her. Just stay still. He moved past her with a shovel, slow and steady. The snake's attention shifted to him, its head tracking his movement. The buzz got louder. Easy, Ingram murmured, and Daisy didn't know if he was talking to the snake or himself. He swung the shovel fast, catching the snake just behind the head. It thrashed, its body whipping, but Ingram pinned it and swung again. The head separated from the body. Even dead, the snake kept moving, its muscles firing in death spasms. Ingram tossed it over the fence and turned to the cow, checking her for bites. She's fine, he said after a moment. Scared, but not hurt. Daisy realized she was shaking. I should have seen it. Should have checked before I let her out. It just got here. Wrong place, wrong time. Ingram wiped the shovel clean. Happens. We'll be more careful going forward. I could have gotten her killed, but you didn't. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. You can't predict every danger, Daisy. All you can do is deal with what comes. It was the first time he'd used her name. That evening, after the chores were done and they'd eaten a quiet dinner, Ingram poured them each a small measure of whiskey. Not enough to get drunk, just enough to take the edge off. You did good today, he said. Quick thinking, getting to the barn fast. Not fast enough. Fast enough that the cow's alive and we know to watch for snakes. He sipped his whiskey. You're tougher than you think, Daisy laughed, bitter. I don't feel tough. I feel like I'm one mistake away from everything falling apart. Welcome to ranching. He set down his glass. Every day's a fight against something. Weather, animals, equipment breaking, money running short. You do your best and hope it's enough. And if it's not, then you get up the next day and try again. He studied her across the table. You think I've got it all figured out? I'm barely keeping this place running. That's why I needed help. It was the most he'd said about himself since they'd met. Daisy found herself curious despite herself. How long have you had this land? 2 years. Bought it from a widow whose husband died working it. She wanted out, I wanted in. He traced a scar on the table with one finger. Spent the first year just trying to survive. This year, I'm trying to actually build something that lasts. And next year? Next year, you'll be gone, and I'll figure it out. No accusation in his voice, just fact. That was the deal. Right, the deal. 1 year, and she was free. Free to go where? Do what? She'd been so focused on escaping McCready that she hadn't thought much past that. A year from now, she'd have money and freedom, but no plan, no home, no family worth the name, just herself, alone again. The thought should have been liberating. Instead, it felt hollow. Why'd you really offer to help me? She asked. You could have hired a hand, someone who'd stay longer than a year. Ingram was quiet for a long moment. Because I knew what McCready would do to you. I've seen men like him before. They don't just own things, they break them. And you... He stopped, choosing his words. You reminded me of someone. Someone who deserved better than what she got. Who? My sister. She married young, married wrong. By the time I realized what her husband was doing to her, it was too late. His jaw tightened. She died 3 years ago. Fell down the stairs, her husband said, but she had bruises that didn't match a fall. Daisy's chest tightened. I'm sorry. So am I. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. When I heard about your situation, I thought, maybe I can't help her, but I can help you. Doesn't fix anything, but it's something. The silence that followed was different from their usual quiet, heavier, more honest. Thank you, Daisy said finally, for telling me that, for... She struggled for words. For seeing me as a person and not just a solution to your problems. You are a person and a solution. Both can be true. He stood and collected their glasses. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start on the north fence, and it's going to be a long day. He was right about that. The north fence was a disaster. Posts rotted through, wire sagging or broken, whole sections that needed to be torn out and rebuilt. They worked side by side in the hot sun, Ingram showing her how to dig post holes, how to stretch wire tight, how to nail it all together in a way that would last. It was brutal work. Daisy's hands bled through her gloves. Her shoulders screamed, but she kept going, driven by something she couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness, or the simple need to prove she could. By mid-afternoon, they'd replaced a dozen posts and restrung 50 yards of wire. They were taking a water break when Ingram said, You're strong. Your father taught you well. He taught me to survive. Didn't know it would include fence building. Survival takes different forms. He wiped sweat from his face. But yeah, he'd be proud of how you're handling this. The words shouldn't have mattered. Her father was dead, his opinion beyond reach. But something in Daisy's chest loosened anyway. What about your family? She asked. Besides your sister, anyone else? Parents are gone. No other siblings. It was just me and Sarah, and now it's just me. He capped the canteen. You get used to alone. Do you? He met her eyes. Sometimes. Other times it's the hardest thing in the world. They finished the north fence over the next 3 days, working from dawn until the light failed. On the fourth day, Mary Henslow appeared riding a mule and leading another loaded with supplies. She was a stout woman in her 40s, weathered by sun and work, but with kind eyes and a smile that came easy. Hunter Ingram, I heard you went and got yourself a wife without telling anyone. Ingram helped her dismount. News travels fast. Bill ran into Tom Patterson at the mill, and Tom said he saw you riding north with a woman. I figured I'd better come see for myself. She turned to Daisy, eyes bright with curiosity. Mary Henslow, welcome to the valley. Daisy Lockhart. She hesitated. Ingram. Daisy Ingram. The name felt strange in her mouth, foreign, not quite real. Well, aren't you a pretty thing? Hunter, you sly dog. Mary beamed. I brought some preserves and bread, figured you two might be too busy settling in to bother with proper cooking. That's kind of you, Daisy said. Nonsense. We take care of our own out here. Mary started unloading the mule. Now, you'll have to come to dinner Sunday. Bill wants to meet you proper, and the boys are dying of curiosity. Ingram and Daisy exchanged a glance. This was it, the first test of their story. We'd be happy to. Ingram said. Mary stayed for an hour, chattering about Valley news, asking polite questions about how they'd met and when they'd married. Daisy let Ingram handle most of it, backing up his story with nods and occasional details. They'd met through her father, started corresponding. When he offered marriage, she'd accepted quick because, and here Ingram's voice went soft, because sometimes you just know. It was a good lie. Simple, believable, touching enough to satisfy without inviting deeper questions. After Mary left, Daisy and Ingram stood in the yard, watching her disappear down the valley. That went well, Daisy said. She believed us. Did she? Daisy turned to him. Or is she just too polite to call us liars? Does it matter? She'll spread the word that we're married, which means when the preacher comes through, nobody will question us making it official. Right, making it official. They'd have to do that eventually. When's the preacher due? She asked. Week, maybe 2. Depends on his circuit. Ingram headed toward the barn. Come on. Daylight's burning, and we've still got work to do. The work never stopped. There was always something. A chicken got sick. The pump needed fixing. Part of the barn roof lifted in a windstorm and had to be nailed back down. Daisy learned to milk the cow, to collect eggs without getting pecked, to read the sky for weather changes. She learned Ingram's rhythms, how he went quiet when he was thinking through a problem, how he favored his left leg on cold mornings, old injury, he said, didn't want to talk about it, how he checked the rifle by the door every night before bed. She learned he was fair, hard, but fair. He expected her to work, but he worked just as hard himself. He never raised his voice, never lifted a hand in anger. When she made mistakes, and she made plenty, he corrected her without making her feel stupid. It could have been worse. That became her mantra. It could have been so much worse. Sunday came and they rode to the Henslow's place. It was bigger than Ingram's ranch, more established. The house had glass windows and a proper porch. The barn stood straight. Children's voices rang out across the yard. Mary greeted them like family, pulling Daisy into a hug that smelled of flour and soap. Bill Henslow was a big man with a bigger laugh, the kind of person who filled a room just by being in it. Their boys ranged from 6 to 14, all tow-headed and loud and energetic as puppies. Over dinner, roast chicken, potatoes, fresh bread that made Daisy want to weep, they talked about valley life, about the families scattered through the hills, about the hard winter they'd had and the dry summer they were expecting. So how are you finding ranch life? Mary asked Daisy. It's not easy for a woman used to town living. I grew up on a ranch, Daisy said. My father raised cattle down south. But you were in Redemption before Hunter found you. Found, interesting word choice. Briefly, after my father died. Well, you've got a good man in Hunter. He's been alone too long. Mary patted her hand. You'll be good for each other. Daisy smiled and said nothing. Across the table, Ingram was talking with Bill about water rights and grazing land, looking perfectly comfortable. He was good at this, she realized, good at being what people expected. Maybe they both were. After dinner, the men went outside to smoke and talk, while Mary showed Daisy around the house. It was warm, lived in, full of the small touches that made a building into a home. Curtains on the windows, rugs on the floor, photographs on the mantel. You'll make Hunter's place beautiful too, Mary said. Just takes time and a woman's touch. I'm not much for decorating. You'll learn. And if you need help, you just holler. The women in this valley look after each other. She opened a trunk and pulled out fabric. I've been saving this for something special. Take it. Make yourself some curtains, maybe a nice tablecloth. I couldn't. You can and you will. Consider it a wedding gift. Mary pressed the fabric into Daisy's hands. We don't get many new families out here. It's good to have fresh blood in the valley. Daisy accepted the fabric, her throat tight. Kindness was harder to bear than cruelty sometimes. They rode home as the sun set, the fabric wrapped carefully in Daisy's saddlebag. Neither of them spoke until they were back at the ranch, the horses put away, the door closed against the night. That wasn't so bad, Ingram said. Mary's nice. She is. Bit nosy, but her heart's in the right place. He hung his hat on the peg by the door. She'll be a good friend to you if you let her. For a year. He paused. Yeah, for a year. The words hung between them, a reminder that this was temporary, all of it, the ranch, the routine, the strange partnership they were building. In a year, Daisy would be gone, and Ingram would find someone else to help him work this land. That was the deal. That was what she'd signed up for, So why did it suddenly feel wrong? The preacher came 2 weeks later, a thin man with a big voice who rode through the valley performing baptisms, marriages, and the occasional funeral. Ingram and Daisy met him at the Henslows' place, where Bill and Mary had gathered a handful of neighbors to witness. The ceremony was brief. The preacher read from his book, asked the required questions, declared them husband and wife before anyone who'd gathered. Ingram slipped a simple gold band on Daisy's finger. He'd bought it from a traveling peddler, he said, sized it by guessing. It fit perfectly. "You may kiss the bride," the preacher announced. Daisy's heart stopped. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't planned for it. Ingram looked at her, a question in his eyes. She gave the slightest nod. He kissed her, quick, chaste, just lips brushing lips. It meant nothing. It was for show. But Daisy felt it anyway. The warmth of another person, the smallest intimacy. The lie becoming real in the space of a heartbeat. Then it was over, and people were congratulating them, and Mary was crying happy tears, and Bill was slapping Ingram on the back. They were married. For real this time, not just in plan, but in law. Daisy Ingram. That's who she was now. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like putting on armor. A new name, a new identity, a shield against the past. They rode home together in the fading light, the ring heavy on Daisy's finger. "You okay?" Ingram asked. "I don't know." She looked at the band, simple and gold and undeniable. "Are you?" "I don't know either." He was quiet for a moment. "But we did it. You're safe now, legal and proper. McCready can't touch you." "Right. McCready." She'd almost forgotten about him, caught up in fence building and chicken tending and playing house with a stranger who was now her husband. Almost forgotten, but not quite. Because that night, as she lay in her small room with the ring on her finger and the sound of Ingram moving around in the next room, she thought about redemption. About Tommy, probably drunk or worse. About McCready, who didn't strike her as a man who let things go. The bargain had bought her time and distance, but it hadn't ended the threat. Nothing would end it except McCready deciding she wasn't worth the trouble. And men like McCready never decided that. Daisy touched the ring, feeling its weight, its promise of protection that might be real or might be illusion. Only time would tell which. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window, whispering warnings she couldn't quite hear. Summer came hard to the valley, bringing heat that shimmered off the grassland and turned the earth to dust. Daisy and Hunter worked through it, their rhythm now familiar as breathing. She'd stopped thinking of him as Ingram weeks ago, somewhere between learning to fix a broken wagon wheel and teaching him how to make biscuits that didn't taste like rocks. He'd become just Hunter. The ranch was changing too. The garden produced vegetables that actually looked edible. The fences stood straight and strong. The barn roof no longer leaked when it rained. Small victories, but they added up to something that felt almost like progress. 3 months into their arrangement, Daisy woke to find Hunter already gone from the house. Not unusual. He often started before dawn. But something felt off. She dressed quickly and stepped outside to find him standing near the barn, staring south toward the valley entrance. "What is it?" she asked. "Rider coming. Been watching him for about 10 minutes. Hunter's hand rested on his gun. Could be nothing. Could be someone lost. But he's coming straight for us, not wandering. Daisy's stomach dropped. She knew. Somehow, she just knew, before the rider got close enough to identify. It was Tommy. Her brother looked worse than she remembered, thinner, his clothes hanging loose, his face carrying the gray pallor of someone who'd been living hard and sleeping rough. He pulled up his horse 20 feet from where they stood, and Daisy saw his hand shaking on the reins. "Daisy," his voice cracked. "Thank heaven. I've been looking everywhere. How did you find me?" She was surprised by how cold her voice sounded. "Asked around. Took a while, but people talk." Tommy dismounted, stumbling a little. "I need to talk to you, please." Hunter stepped forward, putting himself between them. "She doesn't owe you conversation, or anything else." "Who the hell are you?" "Her husband, Hunter Ingram. And you're trespassing." Tommy's eyes went wide. "Husband? Daisy, when did—" 3 months ago. Daisy moved to stand beside Hunter, not behind him. "The same day I left Redemption. The same day you gambled me away to McCready." "I didn't. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." She crossed her arms. "What do you want, Tommy?" He looked between them, lost and desperate. Can we talk? Alone? No, Hunter said. I'm her brother. You're the man who sold her to settle a debt. That buys you nothing. Hunter's voice was hard as winter ground. Say what you came to say, or leave. Tommy's face crumpled. For a moment he looked like he might cry, and Daisy felt a flicker of something, not sympathy exactly, but the ghost of what used to be sibling affection back when they were kids and he wasn't a coward. McCready's looking for you, Tommy said finally. He's been tearing redemption apart trying to find out where you went. Let him look. You don't understand. He's not just angry. He's obsessed. He keeps saying you're his property, that someone stole what belongs to him. Tommy wiped his face. He sent men out searching. They've been asking questions in every town within 50 miles. And you're here because you're worried about me? Daisy's laugh was bitter. Or because McCready's making your life difficult? Both. I know I messed up. You did more than mess up. You destroyed everything Papa built, everything Mama hoped for. You took the easy way out and threw me to the wolves. She took a step forward. So forgive me if I don't trust your sudden concern. I'm trying to make it right. You can't. There's no making this right. Daisy's hands clenched into fists. What happened to the ranch? Tommy looked at the ground. McCready took it. Said since the debt wasn't paid, the collateral was forfeit. Of course he did. She'd expected nothing less, but hearing it still hurt. Her father's land, her mother's garden, all of it gone to a man who collected property, like other people collected debts. Where are you staying? Around, here and there? You're homeless. I had to leave redemption. McCready made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore. Tommy finally met her eyes. I've got nothing left, Daisy. No home, no money, no prospects. I thought maybe if I warned you about McCready, maybe you'd... What? Take you in? Give you another chance to ruin my life? Daisy shook her head. I'm done carrying you, Tommy. I'm done paying for your mistakes. But I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the moment you put your gambling debt ahead of my safety. She turned to Hunter. He needs to leave. Hunter nodded and faced Tommy. You heard her. Mount up and ride out. Please, Tommy's voice broke. I've got nowhere to go. That's not our problem. Hunter's hand stayed near his gun, ready. You brought this on yourself. Time to live with it. Just let me stay one night. I'll sleep in the barn. I won't bother you. No. Daisy's voice was iron. You'll go back to wherever you came from, and you'll stop looking for me. As far as you're concerned, I'm dead. Grieve if you want, but leave me alone. Tommy stared at her like she'd struck him. Maybe she had, in a way. You've gotten hard. I've gotten smart. There's a difference. She stepped closer. Did McCready send you? What? No. Did he offer you money to find me? Promise to forgive what you still owe if you led him here? I swear, Daisy, I came on my own. I don't believe you. She studied his face, looking for the tells she'd learned over the years. The way his left eye twitched when he lied, the way he licked his lips when he was nervous. Both happening now. You made a deal with him, didn't you? No. Tommy? Hunter's voice cut through. I've known liars my whole life. You're not good at it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us the truth, or I'm going to assume you're working for McCready and handle you accordingly. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Tommy sagged. He said if I found you, if I brought him information about where you were, he'd give me enough to start over somewhere else. Out west, maybe California. There it is. Daisy felt something inside her go cold and dead. The last ember of hope that maybe, somehow, her brother wasn't completely rotten. You sold me twice. I needed the money. You always need money. That's your whole problem. She advanced on him now, fury overriding caution. You can't stop, can't quit, can't think past the next card game or the next bottle, and everyone around you pays the price. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. Sorry doesn't fix anything. She was yelling now, months of buried rage spilling out. Sorry doesn't bring back Papa's ranch or Mama's peace or my future. Sorry is just noise you make to feel better about yourself. Daisy, did you tell him? Hunter's question was quiet but sharp. Did you already send word? Tommy's silence was answer enough. Hunter moved fast, grabbing Tommy by the collar and dragging him away from his horse. When? Yesterday. I sent a telegram from Blackwater Station. But I didn't give him the exact location, I swear. Just said I was close, that I'd have specifics soon, which means he could be here as early as tomorrow. Hunter released Tommy with a shove. You stupid, selfish bastard. You just painted a target on your sister's back. He was going to find her eventually anyway. Maybe. Maybe not. But now you've made it certain. Hunter turned to Daisy. Get inside. Pack what matters. We might need to move quick. We're not running. The words came out before Daisy fully thought them through, but once said, she knew they were right. I'm done running. Daisy, he's going to keep coming. If not here, then wherever we go next, and the next place after that. She looked at Hunter. We can spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, or we can end this. End it how? You want to fight McCready? He's got money, men, connections, and we've got the law on our side. I'm a married woman. My husband is you, not him. He has no claim. You think that'll stop him? Hunter shook his head. Men like McCready don't care about law when they want something. Then we make him care. We make it cost more than it's worth. Daisy's mind was racing now, putting pieces together. He wants to look respectable, right? That's what you said. He cares about his reputation. Where are you going with this? We expose him, publicly, in front of witnesses who matter. She turned to Tommy. Did McCready tell anyone else about trying to force me into marriage? Half of Redemption knows. He bragged about it in the Silver Spur. Good. So there's witnesses to his intentions, to the coercion. Daisy started pacing, the plan forming as she spoke. We get him here, on our land, in front of people who can testify. We let him make his threats. Then we show that we're not afraid, that we're ready to fight back legally. And if he just shoots us? Hunter asked bluntly. He won't. Not with witnesses. She hoped. He's too smart for that. He'll bluster and threaten, but if we stand firm, if we show we're not backing down, he'll have to recalculate. Hunter was quiet for a long moment, considering. It's risky. Everything's risky. At least this way we choose the ground. Daisy looked at her brother, disgust clear on her face. And we have bait. Tommy's eyes widened. What? You're going to go back to McCready. You're going to tell him exactly where we are. She smiled without warmth. But first, you're going to help us set a trap. The next 2 days passed in tense preparation. Hunter rode to the Henslows and explained the situation, or a version of it. Daisy's former suitor was causing trouble, refusing to accept that she was married now. Could Bill and some of the other Valley men come by Friday evening just to make sure things stayed peaceful? Bill agreed immediately. Valley people looked after their own, and Hunter had earned their respect over the past 2 years. He'd have at least 6 men there, all armed, all ready to stand witness. Meanwhile, Daisy worked with Tommy, drilling him on exactly what to say to McCready. The truth mostly. She was here, married to a rancher named Hunter Ingram, living in the North Valley. But Tommy would also mention the gathering on Friday, make it sound casual. Just neighbors coming together for dinner, nothing special. McCready would come. Daisy knew it in her bones. Men like him couldn't resist asserting their dominance, especially when challenged. What if this doesn't work? Tommy asked on the second night. He was sleeping in the barn, kept at arm's length, but still needed for the plan. What if he just kills everyone? Then we'll be dead and it won't be your problem anymore. Daisy handed him a plate of food through the barn door. She wouldn't let him in the house, but she wouldn't let him starve either. Old habits. Why do you care? You'll get your money either way. I don't want you dead. Could have fooled me. I know I'm not. Tommy struggled for words. You're all I have left. Our family. I keep destroying it, but I don't want to. Then stop. Daisy's voice was tired. Stop gambling. Stop drinking. Stop making choices that hurt people. It's not complicated. It is for me. He took the plate with shaking hands. I can't explain it. It's like there's something broken inside me, and I keep trying to fix it with cards or whiskey or by selling your sister to a monster. Yeah. Or that. He looked at the food without eating. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I know you don't want to hear it, but I am. Being sorry doesn't make you less broken, Tommy. It just makes you aware of it. Daisy turned to leave, then paused. If you actually want to fix yourself, start by doing one thing right. Help us with McCready, then take whatever money he gives you and leave. Get far away from here and don't gamble it away. Find honest work. Build something. You think I can? I don't know, but I know you won't if you don't try. Friday came with a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Daisy dressed carefully that morning, choosing her best dress. Not fancy, but clean and well-maintained. She braided her hair tight, pinned it up, made herself look respectable, married, settled, armor of a different kind. Hunter was quiet as they worked through the morning chores. Finally, as they were washing up for the afternoon gathering, he said, "You don't have to do this. We could still run." "And spend our lives running?" "No." Daisy dried her hands. "I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of men like McCready thinking they can take whatever they want. You know this could go bad in 100 different ways." "I know." She met his eyes. "But I also know I can't live as his prey. I'd rather die fighting than spend my life hiding." Something shifted in Hunter's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Your father would be proud of you." "My father's dead because a horse kicked him. There's no glory in that, no meaning, just bad luck." She checked the rifle by the door one more time. "But maybe he'd be proud anyway. I hope so." The neighbors started arriving around 3. Bill Henslow came first with Mary and their 2 oldest boys. Then came the Pattersons, Hank and his wife Emma, followed by the Murphys and the Chandlers. All good people, all armed, all clearly aware that this wasn't just a social call. Mary pulled Daisy aside while the men gathered in the yard. "Hunter told Bill what's happening. Are you all right?" "I will be, one way or another." "This man who's coming, he's really that dangerous?" "He's that arrogant. Whether that makes him dangerous or just stupid, we'll find out." Daisy squeezed Mary's hand. "Thank you for being here." "That's what neighbors do." Mary's eyes were fierce. "And if he thinks he can threaten one of ours, he's got another think coming." They didn't have to wait long. Around 4, a cloud of dust appeared on the southern trail. Daisy counted 5 riders. McCready would be in front, she knew. Men like him always led. The riders approached slowly, deliberately, making an entrance, making sure everyone saw them coming. McCready looked exactly as Daisy remembered, big, scarred, radiating a kind of casual menace that came from knowing most people would fold before you even started. His men flanked him, hard cases with dead eyes and ready guns. They stopped at the edge of the yard, taking in the scene. McCready's eyes found Daisy immediately, standing on the porch beside Hunter. A smile spread across his face, ugly and triumphant. "There you are. I've been looking for you, girl." "Mrs. Ingram," Daisy corrected, her voice steady. "And you're trespassing." "Mrs. Ingram." McCready said it like it was a joke. "That's cute, real cute." He dismounted, his men following suit. "See, I don't recognize that marriage. Can't marry what's already mine." "I was never yours." "Your brother's debt said different." McCready walked closer, ignoring the valley men who'd closed ranks around the porch. "He gambled you away fair and square. That's a contract." "A contract enforced at gunpoint isn't legal," Hunter said. "And even if it was, she's married to me now. Whatever you think you had, it's void." McCready finally looked at Hunter, really looked at him. "You must be the fool who thought he could steal from me." "I didn't steal anything. I offered a woman in trouble a better option. She took it." "You interfered in my business. That's theft in my book." McCready's hand drifted toward his gun. "And I always collect what's owed. There's 8 of us and 5 of you," Bill Henslow said from the yard. "And we're all witnesses to you threatening a married couple on their own land. That's not collecting. That's assault." McCready's eyes swept the gathered men, calculating. "Valley trash. You think you scare me?" "We think we're the law out here," Bill continued. "The real law's 3 days away, so we handle our own justice. And right now, you're outnumbered and in the wrong." "In the wrong?" McCready laughed. "I'm trying to collect a legitimate debt. There is no debt." Daisy stepped forward, Hunter moving with her. "Tommy gambled away money, not me. I'm not property. I never was." "Your brother signed papers." "Papers that said what? That I'd marry you to clear his debt? Show me those papers. Show everyone here the document that says you can force a woman into marriage." McCready's jaw tightened. "Everyone in Redemption knows the deal. Knows you threatened a woman with a gun. Knows you tried to coerce her into marriage. Knows she fled rather than submit." Daisy's voice rang clear across the yard. That's not a business deal. That's kidnapping. And if you'd succeeded, it would have been rape. The word hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. You watch your mouth, or what? You'll threaten me again? In front of all these witnesses? Daisy descended the porch steps and Hunter followed, his hand on his gun. Go ahead. Show everyone what kind of man you really are. McCready's face went red. I came here for what's mine. I'm not yours. I'm my own. And I chose to marry Hunter Ingram of my own free will, witnessed and legal and binding. She stopped 5 feet from McCready, close enough to smell the whiskey on him. You have no claim, no right, no power here. So either shoot me and hang for it, or get back on your horse and leave. For a long moment, nobody moved. Daisy could hear her own heartbeat, feel the tension stretched wire-tight. Then Tommy stepped out of the barn. She's right, he said, his voice shaking but clear. I made the deal with you, not her. She didn't agree to anything. You shut your mouth. No. Tommy walked forward, and Daisy saw he was carrying something, papers. These are the IOUs I signed. Nowhere does it say Daisy agreed to marry you. That was your condition, your demand. But she never signed anything. She was going to doesn't mean did. Tommy handed the papers to Bill Henslow. Check them. No signature but mine. Bill examined the documents, then passed them around. He's right. These are just gambling debts. Nothing about marriage, nothing signed by Mrs. Ingram. McCready's hand went to his gun, but he didn't draw. Too many witnesses, too many guns pointed back. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Hunter's voice was cold. You came here trying to intimidate my wife into leaving me. You failed. Now you're going to ride back to Redemption and tell everyone she's married and settled and out of reach. Because if you come back, if you send anyone after her, if you so much as speak her name again, we'll bring these witnesses to the territorial court and file charges. Attempted kidnapping, coercion, extortion. You think the court will listen to you over me? I think the court will listen to 8 respected ranchers all telling the same story. Bill stepped forward. I know the territorial judge, good man, fair man. He won't like hearing how you threatened a woman to force her into marriage. And I know the governor, added Hank Patterson. We served together in the war. One telegram from me, and you'll have attention you don't want. McCready looked around at the gathered men, at Daisy standing defiant, at Hunter ready to draw. His face was a mask of rage barely controlled. This isn't worth the trouble, one of his men muttered. Shut up, McCready snapped. But the moment had shifted. He could feel it slipping away, his power neutralized by numbers and witnesses, and the cold reality that killing everyone here would bring down consequences even he couldn't escape. You'll regret this, he said finally, looking at Daisy. All of you. We already regret knowing you, Daisy replied. Now get off our land. McCready mounted his horse with jerky, angry movements. His men followed, clearly relieved to be leaving. As they turned to ride out, McCready looked back one more time. You think you've won, but people like you don't win. Not against people like me. Maybe not, Daisy said, but we don't have to lose either. They rode out, dust trailing behind them like a curse. Nobody moved until they were out of sight, and even then the tension held for another long minute. Finally, Bill let out a breath. Well, that was something. Think he'll come back? Emma Patterson asked. Maybe, but not soon, and not alone. Hunter put his arm around Daisy's shoulders, the first time he'd touched her like that in public. It felt natural. We'll be ready if he does. Mary hugged Daisy tight. You were so brave. I don't think I could have stood there like that, facing him down. You do what you have to. Daisy's legs felt suddenly weak, adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaky. Thank you. All of you. We couldn't have done this without you. That's what community means, Bill said. We stand together. Always have, always will. They stayed another hour, the gathering turning into an actual social event now that the threat had passed. Food appeared. Mary had brought a pie. Emma had bread. Someone else had brought jerky. They ate and talked, and slowly the fear transformed into something like celebration. Tommy hung back, watching from near the barn. Finally, Daisy walked over to him. You did good, she said. Bringing those papers, speaking up, it was the least I could do. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw something different in his eyes. Not redemption, that would take more than one good act, but maybe the beginning of it. McCready gave me the money already for finding you. How much? $500. Tommy pulled out a roll of bills. I want you to have it. I don't want McCready's money. It's not his anymore. It's mine, and I'm giving it to you. He pressed the bills into her hand. I can't fix what I broke, but maybe this helps a little. Daisy looked at the money, then at her brother. What will you do? Head west, like I told you. Find work. Try to put... He stopped, struggling. Try to be someone Papa wouldn't be ashamed of. He was ashamed, Tommy. Near the end, before the horse kicked him, he told me he regretted leaving the ranch to you. Said he should have split it, given me half. The words hurt to say, but they were true. But he also said people could change, that it just took wanting to badly enough. Did he believe that? I don't know, but I think he hoped it. Daisy pocketed the money. Go west, find honest work, and maybe in a few years write me a letter. Tell me who you've become. And if I fail, then don't write. She managed a small smile. But try not to fail. Tommy nodded and mounted his horse. He looked down at her one last time. I'm sorry I wasn't a better brother. I'm sorry I can't forgive you yet. Maybe someday. She stepped back. Be safe, Tommy. He rode out, and Daisy watched him go with a complicated knot of feelings she didn't want to examine too closely. Hunter came to stand beside her. You think we'll hear from him again? I don't know. Maybe. She leaned against him slightly, tired to her bones. Does it matter? Guess not. He looked down at her. You were incredible today. The way you faced McCready down. I've seen grown men fold under less pressure. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. You could have run, could have hidden. Instead, you stood your ground and made him blink first. Hunter's arm went around her waist, and this time there was no audience, no pretense, just the two of them. That takes courage, or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. He was quiet for a moment. The neighbors are leaving. It's just us now. Yeah. Daisy turned to face him. Thank you for backing me up, for standing with me. You didn't have to... Yes, I did. That was the deal. Partnership. Was it? Or was it just a business arrangement that I'm reading too much into? She searched his face. Because somewhere along the way, this started feeling like more than a transaction. Hunter's expression was hard to read. Yeah, it did. So what does that mean? I don't know. He touched her face gently. The deal was 1 year. We're only 3 months in. A lot can change in 9 more months. Or nothing changes and I leave like we agreed. Or that. His thumb brushed her cheek. What do you want, Daisy? It was the first time he'd asked her that. Not what she needed, not what made sense, but what she actually wanted. I don't know yet, she admitted. Everything's happened so fast. 3 months ago I was trapped, and now I have options. That's new. Options are good. They're terrifying. She stepped back, needing space to think. I need time. You've got 9 months. Use them. Hunter headed toward the barn. I'm going to check on the horses. You should rest. Today took a lot out of you. He was right. Daisy felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. She went inside and sat at the table, Mary's fabric still folded in the corner, the ring heavy on her finger, the house quiet around her. They'd won. McCready was gone, probably for good. She was safe, married, settled. So why did she feel so unsettled? Because nothing was resolved, not really. McCready might come back. Tommy might write, or he might disappear into the West and drink himself to death. And Hunter was a question she didn't know how to answer. The partnership was working, the ranch was thriving. They'd built something together over these 3 months, something that felt solid and real. But in 9 months, she was supposed to walk away from it, take her money and her freedom and start over somewhere new. The thought didn't bring the relief it once had. Instead, it felt like loss. Daisy touched the ring, turning it on her finger. 1 year. That was the deal. But deals could change. People could change. The question was, did she want them to? Outside, the sun set red and violent over the valley, painting everything in shades of blood and fire. Inside, Daisy sat in the growing dark, alone with her thoughts and her choices, and the strange, uncertain future stretching ahead. Tomorrow they'd get back to work. Fences to mend, animals to tend, a life to build. But tonight, in the aftermath of confrontation and victory and fear, Daisy let herself feel everything she'd been holding back, the terror, the rage, the grief, and underneath it all, something fragile and new she didn't quite have a name for yet. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. The days after McCready's departure felt strange, like the calm after a storm when you're still waiting for the roof to collapse. Daisy caught herself listening for hoofbeats, watching the southern trail, jumping at shadows. Hunter noticed but didn't comment, just kept the rifles loaded and his eyes on the horizon. A week passed, then two. The valley settled back into its rhythm. Work from dawn to dusk, meals shared in companionable silence, nights where Daisy lay awake wondering when the other shoe would drop. It dropped on a Tuesday morning in late July. Daisy was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard Hunter call her name, urgency in his voice. She dropped her tools and ran to find him standing by the barn, holding a piece of paper. Ryder came through, left this at the Henslow's place yesterday. Mary's boy brought it over. He handed her the paper, his jaw tight. It was a legal notice, official-looking with stamps and signatures. Daisy scanned it once, then read it again more slowly, her stomach sinking with each word. Silas McCready was filing suit in territorial court, claiming Hunter had stolen property, namely Daisy, that was rightfully his by virtue of Tommy's signed debt. He was demanding she be returned to him, or failing that, compensation in the amount of $5,000 plus damages. "This is ridiculous," Daisy said, but her hands shook. "We proved there was no contract. We proved it to Valley ranchers, not a judge." Hunter took the paper back. "He's trying a different approach. Make it expensive enough that I'll just hand you over to avoid the cost." "You wouldn't—" "Of course not. But he doesn't know that." Hunter crumpled the paper. "What he knows is most men would cut their losses rather than fight. So what do? We get a lawyer. A good one." He looked at her. "That money Tommy gave you, you still have it? Most of it. I was saving it for, She stopped. For when she left. For her new start. "Yes. We're going to need it, and probably more." Hunter headed toward the house. "I'm writing to Larson City. There's a lawyer there, Daniel Voss. Supposed to be smart, doesn't back down easy. If anyone can fight this, it's him. I'm coming with you." "Daisy, it's my fight. I'm coming." They rode out within the hour, leaving the ranch in the care of Bill Henslow's oldest boy. The journey to Larson City took 2 days, camping rough the first night under stars that felt indifferent to human troubles. Around the campfire, Hunter asked, "You scared?" "Terrified." Daisy poked at the fire with a stick. "What if we lose? What if the judge sides with McCready? Then we appeal. Keep fighting until we run out of options." He paused. "Or we could run. Take what we can carry and head somewhere he won't find us." "You do that? Give up your ranch?" "I'd give up anything before I'd hand you over to him." Hunter said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious. "The ranch is just land. You're—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "You're worth more than land." Daisy's throat tightened. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. It's just the truth." He stood and checked on the horses, ending the conversation before it could get deeper. But Daisy sat with his words long into the night, turning them over in her mind like stones in a river, smooth and weighted with meaning. Larson City was bigger than Redemption, more permanent-looking with brick buildings and actual streets instead of dirt paths. They found Daniel Voss's office above a general store, a cramped space filled with law books and papers stacked in precarious towers. Voss himself was younger than Daisy expected, maybe 30, with wire-rimmed glasses and ink stains on his fingers. He listened to their story without interrupting, taking notes in quick, precise handwriting. "McCready's smart," Voss said when they finished. "He's not claiming you agreed to marry him. That's too easy to disprove. Instead, he's arguing that your brother had the legal right to use you as collateral for a debt, and that collateral was seized when the debt wasn't paid." "But people aren't collateral," Daisy protested. "Legally, that's complicated." Voss pulled out a law book, flipped to a marked page. "There's precedent, old precedent, but it exists, for family members being held responsible for debts. It's murky, outdated, but McCready's lawyers will argue that in the absence of clear statutes, traditional practices apply." Traditional practices that treat women like property. Yes? Voss didn't sugarcoat it. The law is behind the times in many ways. What we need to prove is that you were a free agent, that your brother had no authority to bind you to anything, and that your marriage to Mr. Ingram is legitimate and supersedes any alleged claim McCready might have. Can you do that? Hunter asked. I can try, but it's going to be expensive and there's no guarantee. Voss named a fee that made Daisy's heart sink. It was more than Tommy's money, more than she and Hunter had saved combined. We'll find it, Hunter said immediately. How? Daisy looked at him. We'd have to sell the ranch, then we sell the ranch. No, I won't let you do that. She turned to Voss. What if we represent ourselves? You'd lose. McCready will have experienced lawyers. They'll run circles around you. Voss leaned back in his chair. Look, I can work with you on payment. Part now, the rest if we win. But you need proper representation. They left the office with a retainer paid and a court date set for 6 weeks out. 6 weeks to prepare, to gather evidence, to figure out how they'd pay the rest of Voss's fee without losing everything. On the ride back, neither of them spoke much. The weight of it all pressed down, the cost, the risk, the very real possibility that despite everything, Daisy might end up belonging to McCready after all. We could still run, Hunter said as they made camp the second night. And spend our lives looking over our shoulders? No. Daisy fed sticks to the fire. I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of men like McCready thinking they can just take what they want. Even if fighting costs us everything? What's everything? The ranch? She looked at him across the flames. You said you'd give up anything. Did you mean it? Yes. Then we fight. And if we lose the ranch but win our freedom, that's still winning. She paused. Unless, do you regret this? Helping me? You could have stayed out of it, kept your land, your life. I could have stayed out of a lot of things. Hunter's face was shadowed by firelight. Could have let my sister keep suffering rather than confronting her husband. Could have walked away when I heard about you and McCready. Could have lived my whole life playing it safe, never risking anything for anyone. But that's not living. That's just existing. He met her eyes. You said that once, remember? When we were building the north fence. You said sometimes existing is all you can manage. I remember. Well, I'm done just existing. If this fight costs me the ranch, fine. At least I'll know I stood for something. He lay back, looking at the stars. Besides, land's replaceable. People aren't. Daisy wanted to say something profound, something that matched the weight of what he was offering. But words felt inadequate, so she settled for, thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won. They arrived back at the ranch to find everything in order but wrong somehow. Or maybe Daisy was just seeing it differently now, knowing they might lose it. The house Hunter had built with his own hands, the fences they'd mended together, the garden she'd brought back from weeds, all of it suddenly precious because it was threatened. The next weeks blurred together in a haze of preparation. Voss sent requests for documents, proof of marriage, witness statements from the Valley residents, Tommy's original I.O. us. Daisy wrote out her account of McCready's threats, the gun to her head, the choice that was no choice. It took 3 tries before she could get through it without shaking. Hunter sold 2 of the horses, the ones they didn't absolutely need. It brought in some money, but not nearly enough. He talked about selling the milk cow, maybe some of their land, to neighboring ranchers. We're not selling the land, Daisy said firmly. We might have to. No, the land is what we're fighting for. She looked at the valley spread below them, at everything they'd built. We'll find another way. The other way came from an unexpected source. Mary Henslow showed up one afternoon with an envelope containing $200, contributions from Valley families who'd pooled their resources. We take care of our own, Mary said when Daisy protested. And what McCready's doing, trying to buy a person through the courts, it's wrong. We won't stand for it. I can't accept this. You can and you will. Consider it an investment. When you win, and you will win, you can pay us back by helping the next person who needs it. Mary hugged her tight. You're not alone in this. The gesture broke something in Daisy. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, but kindness undid her where threats couldn't. She cried into Mary's shoulder, months of fear and stress pouring out in ugly, hiccuping sobs. I'm scared, she admitted when she could speak again. What if we lose? Then we'll figure out what comes next, together. Mary pulled back, hands on Daisy's shoulders. But I don't think you'll lose. I've seen you face down McCready. That takes strength most people don't have. The judge will see it too. Daisy wanted to believe her. Some days she almost did. 2 weeks before the trial, a letter arrived from Tommy. Daisy recognized his handwriting on the envelope, messy and slanted. She opened it with hands that trembled. The letter was short. Tommy had made it to California, found work on a citrus farm. The pay was decent, the work hard but honest. He'd been sober for 3 weeks, a record, he said, with something like pride. He'd heard about McCready's lawsuit from another drifter who'd passed through redemption. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, he wrote, but if you need me to testify, I'll come back. I'll tell the judge everything, how McCready threatened you, how he forced the situation, how you never agreed to anything. It's the least I can do. Maybe the only thing I can do? Let me know. Your brother Tommy. Daisy read it 3 times, looking for the catch, the angle, the way it would somehow make things worse. But it seemed genuine. Or maybe she wanted it to be genuine badly enough that she couldn't see the flaws. She showed it to Hunter that evening. Could be a trap, he said. McCready could have put him up to it. I don't think so. Daisy folded the letter carefully. Tommy sounded different, clearer, maybe. People don't change that fast. No, but they can start to change, she looked at Hunter. Should I tell him to come? That's your call. He's your brother. He's also the reason we're in this mess. True, but he's also the only one who can testify directly about what McCready said and did. Hunter was quiet for a moment. Having him there could help, or it could make things worse if he falls apart on the stand. It was a risk. Everything was a risk. Daisy wrote back that night, keeping it brief. Come to Larson City. Trial's on the 15th. We'll need you to testify. Don't be drunk. Don't be late. This is your chance to do one thing right. Don't waste it. She posted it the next morning and tried not to think about all the ways it could go wrong. The days crawled toward the trial date. Voss came out to the ranch once to prepare them, drilling Daisy and Hunter on what to say, how to say it, what to avoid. He was thorough to the point of exhausting, making Daisy repeat her story until she could recite it in her sleep. You'll be questioned hard, Voss warned. McCready's lawyer will try to make you seem like a schemer who trapped Mr. Ingram into marriage to avoid legitimate debt. He'll imply you're manipulative, dishonest, immoral. You need to stay calm, stick to facts, and don't let him rattle you. What if I can't? Then we lose. Voss didn't soften it. I know that's harsh, but you need to understand what's at stake. This judge, Judge Carver, he's fair but old-fashioned. He believes in contracts, in debts being paid, in traditional family structures. We need to make him see you as a person, not a piece of property, and that means you need to be composed, articulate, and sympathetic. No pressure, Daisy muttered. Actually, all the pressure. This is your life we're fighting for. Voss packed his papers. But I've seen you handle yourself. You faced down McCready in front of witnesses. You can handle his lawyer. Daisy wished she had his confidence. The night before they were due to leave for Larson City, Daisy couldn't sleep. She got up and went outside, finding Hunter already there, sitting on the porch steps in the dark. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Too much on my mind. He shifted to make room for her. You ready for tomorrow? No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so we might as well get it over with. Daisy sat beside him, their shoulders touching. What are you thinking about? What we'll do if we lose. He looked out at the dark valley. Where we'll go, how we'll start over. You're still planning to run with me? I said I would. That was before it got this complicated, before it cost this much. She turned to face him. Hunter, I release you from the bargain. If we lose, you can stay here, keep the ranch. Tell the judge you were deceived. He might believe it. Stop. His voice was firm. I'm not abandoning you. Not to save the ranch, not to save myself, not for anything. Why? The question came out smaller than she intended. Why are you doing this? Really? Hunter was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful, like he was handling something fragile. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a business arrangement. I don't know when exactly. Maybe when you killed that rattlesnake, or when you faced down McCready, or maybe earlier when you agreed to come here even though you had every reason to think I might be as bad as him. He looked at her. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You worked beside me like a real partner, not like someone counting days until you could leave. You made this place feel like more than just land I'm working. Like what? Like home. Like something worth fighting for. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm and calloused against hers. I know the deal was 1 year and you'd leave. And if that's still what you want when this is over, I'll honor it. But I need you to know, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay. Not because of the work, not because of the arrangement, because He stopped, struggling. Because I care about you. More than I plan to. More than is probably smart. Daisy's heart was pounding so hard she thought he must hear it. Hunter, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know before tomorrow. Before we walk into that courtroom and risk everything. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Whatever happens, I'm with you. All the way. She should say something. Should tell him she felt the same. That somewhere between fence mending and confronting predators, she'd stopped seeing this as temporary and started imagining a future. But the words stuck in her throat, tangled with fear and hope and the weight of tomorrow. Instead, she squeezed his hand and leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat like that until dawn started to lighten the sky. Two people on the edge of everything, holding on to each other while the world shifted beneath them. They rode out at first light, arriving in Larson City with a day to spare before the trial. Voss had arranged for them to stay at a boarding house near the courthouse, separate rooms, proper and respectable. Daisy spent the afternoon going over her testimony again, while Hunter met with Voss to finalize their strategy. That evening, Tommy arrived. Daisy heard the knocks on her door and opened it to find her brother standing there, hat in hand, looking cleaner than she'd seen him in years. He was still too thin, still had that haunted look around his eyes, but he was sober and steady. You came, she said. I said I would. He shifted his weight. Can I come in? They sat in the small room while Tommy laid out what he'd tell the judge. Every detail of McCready's threats, the gun to Daisy's head, the impossible choice. He'd brought the original I.O. us, every scrap of paper documenting his debt. None of them mention you, he said. McCready claimed you were collateral, but it was all verbal, nothing in writing. Will that matter? Voss thinks so. Says contracts need to be documented, especially something like this. Tommy looked at his hands. I'm sorry, Daisy. I know I keep saying it, but I am, for all of it. I know. And she did. Whether it would be enough to rebuild what he'd broken, she didn't know. But it was something. Thank you for coming. It's what families should do. Protect each other. Stand together. He stood to leave. I'll see you tomorrow at the courthouse. After he left, Daisy lay awake most of the night, her mind racing through everything that could go wrong. When she finally slept, she dreamed of courtrooms and judges, and McCready's smile as he dragged her away in chains. She woke to Hunter knocking on her door. It's time. The courthouse was a stone building that looked like it had been standing since before the territory was even established. Inside, it smelled of old wood and older decisions. Voss met them in the hallway, looking sharp in a suit that had seen better days but was clean and pressed. McCready's already here with his lawyers, 3 of them, all from Denver. Voss's jaw was tight. They're going to come at us hard. Stay calm, stick to the truth, and trust me to handle the legal arguments. The courtroom was smaller than Daisy expected. Judge Carver sat at the bench, an old man with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. McCready sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyers, looking confident and righteous. He didn't look at Daisy. The trial began with McCready's lawyers laying out their case. They painted Tommy as a debtor who'd used his sister as collateral in good faith, McCready as a legitimate businessman collecting what was owed, and Daisy as a scheming woman who'd seduced Hunter into marriage to avoid her family obligations. It was nauseating to hear her life twisted into something ugly and false. Then it was Voss's turn. He called Tommy first. Tommy took the stand looking nervous but determined. Under Voss's gentle questioning, he laid out the truth, his gambling problem, his debt, McCready's threats, the gun to Daisy's head. He produced the IOS, showed that none mentioned Daisy, admitted he'd never had the authority to use her as collateral. McCready's lawyers tore into him on cross-examination, painting him as unreliable, a drunk and a gambler whose word meant nothing. Tommy held steady longer than Daisy expected, but eventually he cracked, admitting he'd been drunk when he made some of the agreements, that his memory was hazy on details. It wasn't good. Daisy could see the judge's expression shifting, skepticism creeping in. Next, Voss called Hunter. He testified about meeting Daisy, about the marriage offer, about it being a mutual agreement between free adults. McCready's lawyers tried to imply he'd taken advantage of a vulnerable woman, but Hunter didn't budge. "I offered her a choice," he said firmly, something McCready never did. She could have said no. She chose yes. "And benefited from her choice," McCready's lead lawyer said smoothly. "Free labor on your ranch, a woman to cook and clean." "A partner," Hunter interrupted. "Someone who works as hard as I do, who's made my ranch better in 3 months than I managed in 2 years alone. That's not exploitation. That's partnership." The lawyer smiled like Hunter had walked into a trap. A partnership that conveniently started the same day she fled redemption. Very convenient timing. The timing was desperate, not convenient. There's a difference. Finally, Voss called Daisy. She walked to the stand on legs that felt like water, her hands shaking as she swore to tell the truth. Voss started with easy questions, her name, her age, her background. Then he moved to the harder parts. "Tell the court about your interaction with Mr. McCready in redemption." Daisy took a breath and told it all. The saloon, the gun, the threats, the impossible choice between marriage or watching her brother die. She kept her voice steady, her eyes on Voss, blocking out McCready's presence across the room. "Did you at any point agree to marry Mr. McCready?" "No. Never." "Did your brother have the authority to make that agreement on your behalf?" "No, he didn't." "So when you married Mr. Ingram, you were a free woman making a free choice?" "Yes." McCready's lawyer stood for cross-examination, and Daisy's stomach clenched. He was older, experienced, with the kind of smile that promised traps. "Mrs. Ingram, or should I say Miss Lockhart, since we're disputing the validity of your marriage, you claim Mr. McCready threatened you. Yet you never reported this to local authorities, did you?" The local authorities worked for McCready. The sheriff was on his payroll. "Convenient that you can't prove that claim. Everyone in redemption knows it. Hearsay." The lawyer waved it away. "You also claim you married Mr. Ingram freely, yet you'd only known him a matter of hours. Doesn't that seem suspicious?" "It seems desperate," which I was. Desperate enough to deceive a good man into marriage to escape legitimate consequences? There were no legitimate consequences. I didn't owe McCready anything. Your brother did, and in families, debts are shared. Not in law, they're not. Daisy met his eyes. And even if they were, you can't use a person as payment. That's called slavery, and last I checked, we fought a war over that. The courtroom rippled with reaction. Judge Carver banged his gavel. McCready's lawyer's smile tightened. "You're very articulate for a ranch girl. Someone coach you?" "My mother taught me to read and think. My father taught me to stand up for myself. And life taught me that men like McCready will take everything if you let them." Daisy leaned forward. "I'm not letting him." The lawyer tried several more angles, implying she'd trapped Hunter, suggesting she was immoral, questioning her character. But Daisy held firm, answering each attack with calm precision. Voss had prepared her well. Finally, the questioning ended. Voss called his last witness, Bill Henslow, who testified about McCready's behavior at the ranch, his threats. The confrontation witnessed by 8 Valley men. McCready's lawyers tried to dismiss it as irrelevant to the contract question, but the judge allowed it. Then both sides rested. Judge Carver called for closing arguments. Voss stood, and when he spoke, his voice carried through the courtroom. "Your Honor, this case is simple. A woman was threatened into a forced marriage. She escaped and married freely. Now the man who threatened her is using the courts to finish what force couldn't accomplish. The law is clear. Contracts made under duress are void. No document exists showing Miss Lockhart, now Mrs. Ingram, ever agreed to marry Mr. McCready. Her brother had no authority to bind her, and her marriage to Mr. Ingram is legal, witnessed, and legitimate. To rule otherwise is to say that women are property, that coercion is acceptable, that might makes right. I trust this court will not endorse such principles." McCready's lawyer countered, arguing debt law, family obligation, the sanctity of contracts. He painted McCready as the victim, defrauded of his rightful due. It was slick and polished and false. Judge Carver listened to both sides, his face unreadable. When the arguments ended, he sat back in his chair. I'll take this under advisement. Court will reconvene tomorrow at 10 for my decision. That was it. 24 more hours of waiting. They left the courthouse in silence. Voss looked cautiously optimistic. I think it went well. You did excellent on the stand. What are our chances? Hunter asked. 60-40 in our favor, maybe better. Voss hesitated. But Carver's unpredictable, and McCready's lawyers are good. It could go either way. That night, Daisy couldn't eat. She sat in her room, staring at the wall, trying to prepare herself for the possibility of losing, of belonging to McCready, of everything she'd fought for being stripped away by a judge's decision. Hunter knocked around 8. Can I come in? She let him in, and they sat together on the small bed, shoulders touching. Whatever happens tomorrow, Hunter said, we'll face it together. And if the judge rules for McCready, then we leave. Tonight, if we have to. Head north to Canada or south to Mexico, somewhere he can't follow. You'd really do that? Give up everything? I already told you, you're worth more than everything. He took her hand. I meant it. Daisy turned to face him. I don't want to run. I'm tired of running. Then what do you want? I want to win. I want to stay here, keep building what we started. She stopped, the words too big and too true to say out loud. But Hunter seemed to understand anyway. He pulled her close, and she buried her face against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, leather and sage, and the particular smell of their ranch. We're going to win, he said softly. We have to, because I'm not ready to lose you. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the night deepened around them. Two people waiting for a stranger to decide their fate, hoping that justice and law would somehow align with what was right. Morning came too fast and too slow, the kind of contradiction that only happened when everything hung in the balance. Daisy dressed carefully, the same outfit she'd worn yesterday, her hands steadier than she expected. Maybe she'd run out of fear, exhausted it somewhere in the night, or maybe she'd just accepted that some things were beyond her control. Hunter met her in the hallway. He looked like he hadn't slept either, shadows under his eyes, but his jaw was set with determination. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. They walked to the courthouse through streets just beginning to wake, past shopkeepers opening doors and farmers bringing goods to market. Normal people doing normal things, oblivious to the fact that Daisy's entire future would be decided in the next hour. The courtroom was already filling when they arrived. Mary and Bill Henslow had made the trip, sitting in the gallery with half a dozen other Valley families. Tommy sat alone in the back, looking small and nervous. Even Voss seemed tense, shuffling papers at their table without really looking at them. McCready sat across the aisle, flanked by his lawyers, looking like a man who'd already won. That confidence made Daisy's stomach turn. At precisely 10 o'clock, Judge Carver entered. Everyone stood, then sat again when he gestured. The old man settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the papers before him for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke. I've considered the arguments from both sides, reviewed the evidence, and examined the relevant statutes. This is not a simple case, despite what either party might claim. He looked over his glasses at McCready, then at Daisy. At its heart, this case asks a fundamental question. Can a person be used as collateral for another's debt? The courtroom held its breath. The plaintiff argues that family debts create shared obligations, that traditional practices support his claim, and that the defendant interfered with a legitimate collection action. The defense argues that no contract existed, that any alleged agreement was made under duress, and that the defendant is a free woman who made a free choice to marry. Carver paused, and Daisy felt Hunter's hand find hers under the table. After careful consideration, I find for the defense. The courtroom erupted. Daisy felt the words wash over her but couldn't quite process them. Find for the defense. That meant they'd won? Carver banged his gavel. Order, I'm not finished. The room quieted, though the energy had shifted. McCready's confidence had cracked, his face going red. My reasoning is as follows, Carver continued. First, no written contract exists binding Miss Lockhart, now Mrs. Ingram, to any agreement with Mr. McCready. The IOS presented show debts incurred by Thomas Lockhart alone. While Mr. McCready claims verbal agreements were made, the burden of proof lies with the plaintiff, and that burden has not been met. Second, Even if such an agreement existed, the testimony establishes it was made under duress. Multiple witnesses testified to Mr. McCready's threats, including the use of a firearm to coerce compliance. Contracts made under duress are void as a matter of law. Third, and most importantly, this court cannot and will not endorse the principle that human beings can be traded as property. Such practices ended with the 13th Amendment. To rule otherwise would be to turn back the clock on fundamental human rights. He looked directly at McCready now, his voice hardening. Mr. McCready, your claim is denied in its entirety. Mrs. Ingram's marriage to Mr. Hunter Ingram is legal and binding. You have no claim to her person or to any compensation. Furthermore, your use of the courts to pursue what amounts to attempted kidnapping is itself actionable. I'm referring this matter to the territorial prosecutor for potential criminal charges. McCready shot to his feet. This is outrageous. I have rights. You have the right to leave my courtroom before I hold you in contempt. Carver's gavel came down hard. This case is closed. Court is adjourned. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the courtroom exploded into motion. Mary Henslow was crying and hugging Daisy. Bill was shaking Hunter's hand. Voss was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Daisy stood in the middle of it all, numb with relief and disbelief. They'd won. Actually won. McCready pushed through the crowd toward her, his lawyers trying to hold him back. This isn't over. Hunter stepped between them, his hand on his gun. Yeah, it is. The judge said so. Now walk away while you still can. For a long moment, McCready looked like he might do something stupid. Then one of his lawyers grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. McCready shook him off, but stepped back. You're not worth the trouble, he spat at Daisy. Never was, she replied calmly. That's what you never understood. He left, his lawyers trailing behind, and Daisy felt something unknot in her chest. It was really over. McCready was gone. The threat ended, her freedom secured by law instead of luck. They celebrated that night at a restaurant in Larson City, the whole group squeezing around 2 tables pushed together. The Valley families toasted their victory, Bill made a speech about standing together, and Mary cried happy tears into her napkin. Tommy sat at the edge of the group, not quite part of it, but not excluded either. Daisy caught his eye at one point and raised her glass slightly. He returned the gesture, a small acknowledgement that maybe, someday, they might find their way back to being family. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. After dinner, as the group was breaking up, Tommy approached Daisy. I'm heading back to California tomorrow, he said. Back to the farm. Good. That's good. Daisy meant it. Stay sober, Tommy. Build something. I'm trying. He hesitated. Can I write you? Let you know how I'm doing. Yeah, you can write. She wouldn't promise to write back. He hadn't earned that yet. But she could receive his letters, bear witness to his attempts at redemption. That seemed fair. He nodded and left, and Daisy watched him go with complicated feelings she didn't try to untangle. Voss approached with the final paperwork. Sign here and here. This makes the judgment official. Daisy signed, her hand steady now. Thank you. For everything. You did the hard part. I just argued the law. Voss smiled. Good luck with the ranch. Something tells me you two are going to do just fine. They rode back to the valley the next day, taking it slow, enjoying the journey instead of racing through it. The landscape felt different now, not threatening, just wild. The same mountains, the same scrubland, but Daisy saw them with new eyes. This was home. Not temporarily, not conditionally, just home. They arrived at the ranch as the sun was setting, painting everything gold. The house looked smaller than Daisy remembered, rougher. But it was theirs, secured now not just by a handshake deal, but by law and choice, and the things they'd built together. Hunter took care of the horses while Daisy went inside. The house was exactly as they'd left it. Mary's fabric still folded on the shelf, the dishes stacked neatly, the floor swept clean. But it felt different, like it had been waiting for them to come home and make it real again. When Hunter came in, Daisy was standing by the window, looking out at the valley. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just thinking. About? About how much has changed in 6 months. Last spring I was trapped in redemption with no future. Now I'm standing in my own house, legally married to a good man, with a future I actually want. She turned to face him. It's a lot. Is it too much? No, it's exactly right. She crossed to him, suddenly nervous despite everything they'd been through. "Hunter, about the deal we made. You want to leave." His voice was carefully neutral. "I understand. We agreed on a year, and I'll honor that. I'll get you the money, help you start over wherever you want." "That's not what I'm saying," Daisy cut him off. "I'm saying the deal was based on me needing an escape and you needing help. But things have changed. I've changed." "How?" "I don't want to leave." The words came easier than she expected. "I want to stay. Not because of the deal, not because I owe you, but because this is where I want to be. With you. Building this life we started." Hunter was very still. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She took his hands. "I know we started this as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, probably when you faced down McCready for me, or maybe when you offered to give up your ranch, or maybe earlier when you let me be your partner instead of your employee, it became real for me. You became real for me. Daisy, I love you." There, she'd said it, the three words that terrified her more than any threat McCready had made. "I don't know when it happened exactly, but it did. And I want to stay. If you'll have me." Hunter's face did something complicated, surprise and relief and joy all tangled together. Then he was kissing her, not the chaste brush of lips from their wedding, but something real and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too. Have for months, probably. Was just waiting for you to figure out what you wanted." He smiled. "I'd have waited the full year if that's what you needed." "I don't need a year. I just needed to stop being afraid long enough to see what was right in front of me." Daisy kissed him again, softer this time. "So what now?" "Now we get back to work. Ranch doesn't run itself." He pulled back, grinning. "And we're behind on everything after being gone for 2 weeks. Very romantic. You want romance? I'll give you romance." Hunter swept her up and she laughed as he carried her toward the bedroom. "But first, let me show my wife how much I missed her. I thought we had work to do. Work can wait until tomorrow." And it did. The next morning they fell back into their rhythm, but it was different now. Better. The work was the same. Animals to feed, fences to check, 1,000 small tasks that made up ranch life. But they did it together, not as business partners, but as people building a life. Over the next few weeks, the Valley families visited one by one, bringing gifts to celebrate the victory and the marriage that had become real. Mary brought more fabric and curtains she'd sewn herself. Bill brought lumber to fix the barn's lean. The Pattersons brought preserves. The Murphys brought tools. The Chandlers brought seeds for next spring's garden. "Told you we take care of our own," Mary said as she hung the curtains, transforming the rough cabin into something that actually looked like a home. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough," Daisy said. "Then pay it forward. When the next person needs help, you be there." Mary stepped back, admiring her work. "That's how community works." Daisy promised she would. Summer turned to fall, and the valley blazed with color. They brought in the harvest from the garden, stored food for winter, prepared for the hard months ahead. Hunter taught Daisy to hunt, and she brought down her first deer, feeling pride mixed with the solemn weight of taking a life to sustain others. "Your father would be proud," Hunter said as they dressed the kill. "Maybe. He'd probably say I should have aimed better. Took me 3 shots. But she smiled as she said it, the memory of her father no longer painful, just bittersweet. A letter arrived in October from Tommy. He was still in California, still working, still sober. He'd met a woman, a widow with 2 children who ran the farm's business side. He was taking it slow, he wrote, not trying to rush into anything, but for the first time in his life he was thinking about a future that didn't involve cards or whiskey. "I know I can't undo what I did," he wrote. "Can't bring back Papa's ranch, or give you back the safety you lost. But I'm trying to be someone different, someone better. I hope that counts for something." Daisy wrote back for the first time. A short letter, nothing flowery. She told him about the trial, about staying with Hunter, about building a life. She said she was proud of him for trying, and that she hoped he'd keep trying. She didn't say she forgave him. That would come later, if it came at all. But she could hope for his redemption while maintaining her boundaries. That seemed fair. Winter came hard, the way it always did in Wyoming. The valley filled with snow, the creek froze solid, and the work became about survival rather than progress. They spent long evenings by the fire. Hunter teaching Daisy to read the almanac and plan for spring planting. Daisy teaching Hunter to mend clothes properly instead of just making them barely functional. On particularly cold nights, they'd lie in bed and talk about the future. Maybe expanding the herd, maybe building a bigger house, maybe starting a family someday when they were ready. "You think about having children?" Hunter asked one night as wind rattled the windows. "Sometimes. Do you?" "Yeah, but there's no rush. We've got time to figure out who we are before we start raising someone else." He pulled her closer. "Besides, I'm still getting used to the miracle of you choosing to stay." "It's not a miracle, it's just what made sense." But she smiled as she said it, because it did feel a little miraculous, that she'd escaped McCready, found Hunter, built something real from the wreckage of her old life. Spring came eventually, the way it always did. The snow melted, the creek ran high with runoff, and the valley turned green almost overnight. They planted the garden with the seeds the Chandlers had given them, repaired winter damage to the barn and fences, and brought their horses out to graze on fresh grass. One afternoon in early May, almost exactly a year after Daisy had first arrived, they stood together on the small rise behind the house, looking out over everything they'd built. "You know what today is?" Hunter asked. "1 year since I showed up on your doorstep with a bag and a lot of fear. 1 year since you chose to trust me even though you had no reason to." He took her hand. "Best decision I ever made, offering you that deal. Best decision I ever made, accepting it." Daisy leaned against him. "You know what's funny? I thought I was choosing the lesser of two evils, McCready or a stranger who might be lying. Turned out I was choosing my future. I just didn't know it yet. Life's like that sometimes. You make choices based on what you know, and then you live with them until they become something else entirely." Hunter was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking." "About?" "About how we started this as a business deal, but it became something real. And how the paperwork still says it's temporary. 1 year and you get money to leave." He turned to face her. "I want to change that. Make it permanent, not because of the original deal, but because this is what we both want." "Are you proposing to me?" "Because we're already married." "I'm proposing we renew our vows, do it right this time, not because we're running from something, but because we're running toward something." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, better than the simple gold band he'd bought from a peddler, with a small stone that caught the sunlight. "Hunter, marry me again, Daisy, for real this time. For love, not survival. For a future, not an escape." She took the ring, feeling its weight, its promise. It was beautiful in a simple way, unpretentious but real. "Yes, always yes." She let him slide it onto her finger next to the original band. 2 rings for 2 marriages, the one we needed and the one we choose. He kissed her there on the rise with the valley spread below them, and Daisy thought about how far she'd come. From a woman being traded like currency to a woman who owned herself, her choices, her future. From someone who'd lost everything to someone who'd built something worth keeping. The journey hadn't been easy. She'd faced down threats and trials, betrayal and fear. She'd learned that survival sometimes meant accepting help, that strength came in different forms, and that choosing to trust someone despite every reason not to was its own kind of courage. She'd learned that redemption was possible, for Tommy trying to rebuild himself in California, for her own broken family, even for a desperate bargain that had transformed into love. Most importantly, she had learned that freedom wasn't just about escaping what held you back. It was about choosing what you wanted to move toward. And she'd chosen this: the ranch, the valley, the man standing beside her, the life they were building together, one fence post and planted seed at a time. "What are you thinking about?" Hunter asked. "About how McCready thought he could own me, how Tommy thought he could trade me, how everyone in Redemption thought I'd either submit or run." Daisy looked out at the valley, at the home they'd made. "They were all wrong. I didn't submit and I didn't run. I fought. And I won. We won. Yeah, we did." She squeezed his hand. "Come on. We've got work to do before dinner, and I promised Mary I'd bring her some of those preserves we made." They walked back down the rise together. 2 people who'd started as strangers, bound by necessity, and became partners bound by choice. The ranch spread before them, imperfect, rough, constantly demanding work and attention. But it was theirs, built through hardship and defended through courage. That evening, as the sun set over the valley, Daisy stood in the doorway, watching Hunter finish the evening chores. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew his place in the world. And she realized she knew hers too now. Not defined by men who tried to claim her, or family who failed her, but by her own choices and the life she'd built with her own hands. The frontier was still harsh, still unforgiving to those who couldn't adapt. But Daisy had learned to more than survive. She'd learned to thrive. And in a place where only the strong endured, she'd found something rare and precious. Not just survival, but a life worth surviving for. Hunter came in as darkness fell, and they sat together at the table eating a simple dinner, talking about plans for tomorrow and the day after and all the days stretching ahead. No longer counting down to an ending, but building toward a future. Outside, the wind picked up, but inside they were warm. The fire crackled, the curtains Mary had made fluttered gently, and the house felt less like shelter and more like home. Daisy looked at the 2 rings on her finger, one bought in desperation, one given in love, and understood that sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. That the things you thought would destroy you could instead teach you how strong you really were. She'd been sold for a debt she didn't owe, threatened by a man who thought power gave him rights, and abandoned by the brother who should have protected her. But she'd also been offered a chance by a stranger who became something more, supported by a community that stood together, and given the opportunity to become someone she'd never imagined she could be. Not a victim, not property, not even just a survivor, but a woman who turned a desperate bargain into a lasting legacy, who transformed hardship into strength, and who'd learned that the truest freedom came not from running away from what scared you, but from standing your ground and building something worth fighting for. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.